All right, so tonight kicks off week 9 of the NFL, and we have a lot to break down today because there's this mini bye-mageddon with 6 teams on bye. And obviously, as we approach the halfway of the season, we're getting into those really crucial start-sit decisions where you're making your push for the playoff or you're trying to hold on to that bye week in the first round of the playoffs. So this is where things start to get very interesting for fantasy. Also, this is the first week where a lot of my content is going to be appearing on the Sleeper YouTube channel as well as the Sleeper platform itself. So make sure to go check it out there. But as always, the bulk of my content and analysis is going to be right here on this channel. So go ahead, like, subscribe, and I'll go ahead and cue the intro. Welcome back into Twintakes Fantasy Football, and we have a massive week to break down. We are now almost halfway through the season, which means there are some very crucial decisions that we have to have, especially when it comes to a week in which we have not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 teams on bye. So we really got to dig deep, especially for some of those deeper leagues or some of those rosters that have expanded out to 2 or 3 flex players. So without further ado, let's just jump to the matchups that I'm looking forward to and where we can kind of scrounge up those fantasy points. And for all their sake, let's hope it's a repeat of last week where it was a lot of high-scoring games rather than what we experienced in the first 7 weeks. So first matchup to look forward to is going to be Chargers at the Falcons. Currently, the Chargers are favored by 3 points. It's a little less than I was expecting. Over under is 49, which means projected points for the Chargers is going to be 26, while the Falcons are currently projected at 23 points. All right, we finally got Kyle Pitts involved in the offense, and he found the end zone. So when is it Drake's London's turn? Probably not soon, just because they found a offense that seems to work for Arthur Smith and the Falcons. They have been overperforming expectations on the year so far, as they currently lead the NFC South division. Yes, you heard me correctly. The Falcons are in the number 1 seed in the NFC South and currently going to get a home playoff game if things had ended as today's season. So they've definitely overperformed expectations there. A lot of it is due to the mini resurgence of Marcus Mariota, who is the overall 8th ranked quarterback for fantasy on the season. Again, he has that dual threat ability. He rushes for touchdowns. He gets you that rushing upside. And if he just brought just a slightly better dimension to his passing game, got Kyle Pitts more involved, Drake London more involved, they'd have actually a really, really good balanced passing attack. Also, Cordell Patterson was taken off IR. We don't know if he's going to play this week, but that's a great sign for having Cordell Patterson back practicing with the team, as he provides a material upgrade over Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley. But we're going to move forward assuming that he does not play this week and he's not activated for the game. He's just brought off IR to continue practicing again. The identity of this team is running the ball. That's what we've always lamented a little bit with the way Kyle Pitts and Drake London are being utilized, but it's working for them. So you can't really fault them for winning games by relying heavily on Algier and Caleb Huntley and Cordell Patterson's absence. And it's going to play marvelously into a Chargers defense that is 30th ranked against the run. So I expect them to at least keep this game close, and that's maybe why Vegas only has the line set at -3 in favor of the Chargers. But conversely, Atlanta doesn't have not just a bad run defense, they have a bad defense overall. AJ Terrell has had a material downgrade in his production so far this year. And I expect the Chargers to hopefully find some semblance of an offense. This has been one of the worst teams that just cannot seem to escape the injury bug. They've missed Keenan Allen for almost 8 weeks now. Jalen Guyton went down with a torn ACL. Mike Williams now is going to be out for 4 weeks, so there's going to be a lot of issues going on with the Chargers as they struggle to find their offensive identity with less than half of their offensive weapons available. But hopefully Brandon Staley, that some have considered him a boy genius. Maybe that term has lost a little relevance in the past few weeks, but I still believe in him as a younger coach, as a progressive coach, to get it done. Unfortunately, it looks like Keenan Allen will have yet another setback. A lot of people were expecting him to come back from the bye full strength, but there's another setback in practice. He did not practice on Monday and Wednesday of this week, which is really, really concerning. So we'll just have to look elsewhere for fantasy options. But thankfully for the Chargers, this is an Atlanta defense that gave up 31.8 fantasy points to Deontay Foreman last week. And they have this guy that's like pretty good named Austin Eckler. So he might be a little bit better than Deontay Foreman, in my opinion. He's okay. But let's jump into our must starts. And as you say, you got to start Austin Eckler. He has overall RB1 upside on the week. He could go for a Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara week that we saw last week. So Austin Eckler is definitely a smash start. You're going to play Marcus Mariota. You're going to play Kyle Pitts. Justin Herbert is a must start. And if Keenan Allen does play, I will grant him that must start status. If Keenan Allen does continue to remain out with that lingering hamstring injury, Josh Palmer upgrades himself into the must start category here. So whatever the number one wide receiver is for the Chargers is a must start. On the probably start category, Tyler Algier, not truly tremendous on the ground, especially when he's sharing a lot of his touches with Caleb Huntley, but in a matchup as juicy as this, he's probably going to start in your lineup. And also Gerald Everett from the tight end position, especially with how many injuries and with Mike Williams out. I expect Gerald Everett to be heavily involved in this offense. And in a desperation start, if Keenan Allen plays, this is where you'll find Josh Palmer in the desperation start. If, again, Keenan Allen doesn't play and he's held up for yet another game with that hamstring injury, Josh Palmer will upgrade himself to that must-start status. Also, Drake London and Caleb Huntley if you're really hurting for spots in your roster. So, next game that I want to talk about, Seahawks at Cardinals. Currently, the over-under is the highest of the week at 50.5 points, with Arizona favored by 2 points. Don't agree with that either. Projected points for Arizona here is 26.5, while Seahawks are currently projected for a little over 24 points. And oh, baby, if you had told me that the Seahawks be winning the NFC West at the beginning of the season, I would have called you crazy. Straight up called you crazy. This is an offense that we projected to be one of the worst in the NFL after getting rid of Russell Wilson. We expected them to have a top 5 pick, tanking for a new quarterback, but things are just completely revolutionized. In Seattle, Geno Smith, we talked about Marcus Mariota being the 8th ranked quarterback. Geno Smith is the 7th best quarterback for fantasy on the season so far and does not look to be slowing down. PFF has him graded as a top 3 quarterback as well, so not only is he good for fantasy, but he's good in real life as well. Kenneth Walker has been a top 5 running back for fantasy since Rashad Penny went down to injury, and they still have one of the most elite receiving duos in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who are both playing out of their freaking minds right now. This team is just fun to watch, and honestly, it looks like they're just having fun on the field, which generally translates to a really good play. If you're motivated and if you're feeling good, then you probably will find success. A lot better to find fantasy success with a team that's having fun than a team that hates itself. Broncos. So I expected them to put up an amazing game against this bottom third defense that is the Cardinals. But I expect the Cardinals, and maybe this is why the line is currently favoring the Cardinals, but I expect this to be a good game with the Cardinals. They look like a completely revolutionized team since D-Hop came back. Not only his play on the field, but first and foremost, he is the emotional leader of that team, and they just look completely rejuvenated with him back in the fold. This is the team that we saw last year that went 7-0 to start out the season. This is the team that had a really strong to the start to the season 2 years ago. D-Hop just completely changes what this offense is all about and seems to, again, have that calming effect on Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray. We've gone on and on about the channel about how much D-Hop's presence mean to these Cardinals, not just from a performance standpoint. So I know they lost last week, but that is a really, really good Vikings team that they lost to, and they absolutely eviscerated the Saints team 2 weeks ago. That looked pretty good against the Raiders last week. So again, I think that we kind of have to throw out the first few games of the season now that they've kind of found their stride. It's time to reevaluate the Cardinals as, a pretty offensively dynamic team. So again, when you call to your must starts, Kyler Murray, D-Hop, and Eno Benjamin from the Cardinals side, Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, pretty standard stuff from the Seahawks side. The probably starts, Zach Ertz, as long as Greg Dortch continues to not be involved in this offense. Marquise Brown is still sidelined. Zach Ertz is still getting peppered with targets, having over 6 targets per game on average with Kyler Murray under center as quarterback. So Zach Ertz is definitely a strong start at head end this week. And in desperation, I will take Rondale Moore. His production is really volatile and hard to predict. We saw he had 3.1 points against the Saints a couple weeks ago, and then last week he goes off for 19.9 fantasy points. Like, sometimes he's utilized, sometimes he's not. So if you need a desperation start, I would look for someone that's a little bit more consistent than Rondale, but he offers upside to win you a week, just like he showed last week. But I still think, if I had to pick a game, I still think the Seahawks are going to take this one. I would be betting money line on the Seahawks despite how Vegas has Arizona favored. Third game I want to talk about is going to be Ravens at the Saints. This is going to be the Monday night game where Baltimore is favored by 3 points. The over-under set at 48, which leaves Baltimore projected to have 25.5 points, and the Saints have 22.5 points. And this is maddening. This game is absolutely maddening because there's just so many freaking injuries to deal with. Is Jameis going to come back? What are Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry up to? Bateman is out for 4 weeks with his foot injury. Gus Edwards and Mark Andrews are both listed as questionable and game time decisions, which is the epitome of a fantasy nightmare for a Monday night game. This is absolutely ridiculous. So a lot of the stuff is betting that some of these, if you're leaving them in your lineup, you're betting they're actually going to play, which is a massive risk if it comes to game time and they're marked out again, which we've seen is not uncommon with a lot of these players. Or even if they do play, we can see that they could get re-injured right in the first few minutes of the game. Looking at you, Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. So a lot of concerns when it comes to this game, and wait until Monday night. I would be looking for options. If you have more sustainable options, I would be really pivoting in order to save yourself a lot of anxiety around those games. But thankfully, for a lot of these players, you should have some built-in backups that you have access to on your waiver wire. For Andrews, Isaiah Likely showed a very dominant performance last week against the Buccaneers. So if he's ruled out, you should have him stashed on your bench to go ahead and pivot him into the tight end position. And Gus Edwards, Kenyon Drake has proven himself to be a fine fantasy backup. So if Gus Edwards is a game time decision with that hamstring injury and he is ended up ruled out for that game, Kenyon Drake should slot in just fine. I believe both those guys are available in over 50% of leagues on the waiver wire, so go ahead and pick those guys up just as a small insurance policy. But getting away from health, these are two of the most creative offenses in the NFL, so hopefully health isn't a factor and we just get a really exciting game. Lamar is truly like a once-in-a-generation quarterback that can go off for 40 fantasy points, can put up 100 yards on the ground, can throw for 400 yards, just absolutely adds a whole nother dimension that we haven't yet to see since probably Michael Vick. And on the Saints side, you really never know what you're going to get. Between Taysom Hill, Chris Olave, and Alvin Kamara, they have so many ways to dissect opposing defenses, so many creative ways to run the football or get the football in the end zone that you just never know what you're going to get. So I'm really hoping for a very creative, very exciting, and very high-scoring game from these two guys, and that no injuries severely impact this game because we don't like injuries here. And I still think that even though the Ravens did boost their defense by trading for Raquan Smith, that does help strengthen the run game, especially against Alvin Kamara. But their defense, especially the secondary, is still quite lacking. Marcus Peters looks pretty bad compared to previous years. His performance has been on a sharp decline, and Kyle Hamilton, as per expected with a rookie, has been struggling in coverage in the secondary. So must starts. I'm gonna take a little bit of a twist here. So Lamar, Devin Duvernay from the Ravens side. And then I have in brackets starting Ravens tight end, who either Andrews or Likely. Starting Ravens running back, Gus Edwards or Kenyon Drake. Starting Saints QB, whether it's Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton. And then obviously you have Kamara, Olave, and Taysom Hill. Just because of how limited the fantasy options are here because of the injuries, the probably start category, there's no one in the probably start category just because with so many limited options, you know, they're going to soak up a large part of the offensive snap share. So anyone that's going to be relevant in this game is going to be a must start. And then in the desperation start, we're reaching really deep dive. Again, we just throw in some tight ends is really what we do in this desperation start. Ravens are 18th against the tight end with some of the lack of strong safety play from Kyle Hamilton. So Juwan Johnson, if you want to throw him there as a streaming quarterback for a tight end, if your main tight end is on bye, yeah, I'm totally fine with streaming Juwan Johnson. So those are the three games that I really wanted to highlight and dive into. Let's get into our quick hits / best of the rest. And we'll start off with the Eagles at the Texans, where Philadelphia is currently favored by 14.5 points. This should be an absolute rout of the Texans tonight, and you got to play your Eagles. I would probably shy away from Devonta Smith, just because this should be a run-dominant performance of the Eagles with how bad the Houston Texans are against the run. And then once this game gets out of hand early, then there's no reason for Jalen Hurts to put the ball in the air. There's no reason for them to postpone this game. They'll just probably run out the clock with Gainwell, Sanders, and Boston Scott. So I think the opportunity for an amazing air raid game is limited by how bad the Texans actually are. Maybe play Pierce, but with how dominant this defensive line is, I might want to look elsewhere because my hot take is that the Texans will not even score a single point tonight. Moving on, Dolphins at Bears. I'm very excited to see what the rushing attack of this Bears can do to this bottom 10 rushing defense. With the Dolphins, yes, I know they just traded for Bradley Chubb. But again, this is not a material upgrade to what they already had. Again, it'll keep them fresher longer, but I don't think it actually is going to truly impact the defense overall. I would even take a shot on Khalil Herbert here against this bottom 10 defense. And again, I'm going to continue watching the ascension of Justin Fields. It seems that Eberflus is now leaning into those designed runs for Fields and kind of shying away from the stuff that, you know, traditional quarterback would do and really utilizing the skill set of Justin Fields. So he is a must start. I picked him up off waivers personally, so I will be starting him this week. I have full confidence with Justin Fields, following my own fantasy advice to pick him up off waivers from earlier this week and starting him going forward. On the Dolphins side, they just traded for Jeff Wilson Jr., but I don't think he provides any upgrade over Raheem Mostert, and Mostert should still hold the running back 1 job. I don't think there's any impact on the offensive side from the trades that went down. And then you just continue to roll with Tua, Waddle, and Tyreek as one of the most dominant quarterback and double wide receiver combos in the NFL. Don't get cute outside of that. Panthers at the Bengals. I'm really going to pay close attention to this game. We talked really, really in depth about the gaffe that was the Bengals Monday night performance against the Browns, and I'm really curious to see if that was just, you know, the demons that Joe Burrow seems to have against the Browns. I think he's 0-5 against the Browns. They just seem to have his number. So I don't know if he just sees ghosts when Myles Garrett is in his face, or if this is just the actual offensive regression we could expect with Jamar Chase out. Is Jamar Chase the key to unlocking this offense the same way A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill unlocked the Eagles and Dolphins offenses respectively? And is this something that we continue to anticipate going forward with Jamar Chase sidelined with that hip injury? Very, very interesting to see, especially against a bottom tier defense in the Carolina Panthers. On the Panthers side, let's just cut it off after DJ Moore and Deontay Foreman. Those guys are pretty good. Let's not get any cute against a Bengals defense that is in the top half of the league in both run and pass defense. Bills at Jets. This is going to be absolutely horrific for the Jets. I'm still curious to see who steps up in the Jets backfield as the RB1, whether it's James Robinson or Michael Carter. But given how dominant this defensive line is with Boogie Basham, Ed Oliver, and Von Miller, I don't expect that question to be answered this week. I am one of those unfortunate people that have both Michael Carter and James Robinson on my roster, and I still am just going to sit both of them until I figure out which one is going to be startable and which one's going to be droppable. Mostly just because the Jets have a really, really good running back schedule for the fantasy playoffs. On the other side of the ball, I'm curious how to see how Nyheim Hines is going to be slotted in this offense, as I really just don't think he provides any sort of material upgrade over what Devin Singletary already is. So at this point, maybe it takes a little bit of the value away from Singletary, but not enough to start Nyheim Hines. I'm just going to go ahead on the same way as the Dolphins. I'm playing Diggs, Davis, and Allen, and going to cap it off there from the Bills side. Vikings at Commanders. A very low under over here means not getting cute outside of the big three from the Vikings and Cook, Jefferson, and Cousins. But on the other side of the ball with the Commanders, there's very, very little clarity on the chain of command for the running back room. So despite a fairly good defensive matchup from the running back position, I just don't feel comfortable playing anyone outside of Terry McLaurin. We saw Antonio Gibson find the end zone last week, but the week prior to that is Brian Robinson. So I think trying to predict this backfield at this point in time is a exercise in insanity. So McLaurin is good with Taylor Heineke under center, and I'll just leave it at that. Raiders at Jaguars. This is absolutely two abysmal defenses. Despite some moments of success in the offense, and this is going to be our honorary running back game of the week, where you play Josh Jacobs because it's a great matchup, and you play Travis Etienne because there's no J-Rob to take touches from him, and it's a great matchup. You are going to, but what about Devontae Adams? Yes, you're going to play Devontae Adams. That's why it's an honorary running back game of the week, because you're not sitting Devontae Adams, especially against this atrocious pass defense of the Jaguars. But what about Trevor Lawrence? What about Derek Carr? Okay, I do not trust quarterbacks of teams that are 2-5 and 2-6 respectively. They can sit their butts down on the bench. I will not try to get cute outside of those main guys. Darren Waller continues to be injured, and I don't see any reason to try to take my shot on a Foster Moreau or Hunter Renfrow or really anyone outside of those three guys that have been previously mentioned. Again, I try to find guys that are going to be part of more dynamic offenses that have opportunity for scoring points, even if their talent is a little bit less than like a Christian Kirk. If that makes sense, of course. The one person I will say, again, just how horrific tight end has been, Evan Ingram. He's been very, very consistent at the tight end position, averaging over 6 targets per game. So Evan Ingram is a streaming candidate at tight end, but this is a game that I would be avoiding outside of those 4 guys. Correcting myself. Rams at Bucks. I almost skipped this game just because I expect this game. Like, I really wonder if they're going to go to a retirement home and play us in a retirement home, considering the average ages of players in this game. Like, why are these players so old? Half of them are injured and banged up, and most of them are on the way out of the league as it is already. But I did include it just because, there's so much hype around Tom Brady, and there's so much, and the Rams were Super Bowl champions last year. And obviously Mike Evans versus Jalen Ramsey is always going to be a very, very fun matchup to watch. So I'll be keeping my eye out for that. And maybe, just maybe, this is the week that we get some clarity on the Rams backfield, whether it's Darrell Henderson or Kyron Williams, or if they somehow manage to convince Cam Akers to come back into the fold for them. So Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, those are the guys. But just given how these defenses are fairly decent, I would be putting both Matt Stafford and Tom Brady on the bench for this week. Last one here, Titans at Chiefs. This game is always just so freaking weird. The Titans beat the Chiefs last year without even having Derrick Henry, and the defense always plays tough and scrappy. This game is always just one of those ones where just crazy stuff happens. So I expect this to actually, I would be betting the under on this game. I expect Mike Vrabel somehow seems to have the Chiefs number, but also on the other side, their offense hasn't been doing really anything. So this is going to be a very interesting game to watch, and this is going to be my upset watch of the week. So on one side for the Titans, Henry's the only guy I'm willing to play against the Chiefs. I'm not getting cute. No wide receivers, no Robert Woods, no nothing. Henry, and just move on. And then on the other side, this is not the game, just because I talked about how weird stuff happens and how things just spiral out of control with the Chiefs, and how good and scrappy that this Titans defense plays. I'm not going to take a shot on an MVS or a Mecole Hardman or even a Kadarius Toney here. I don't want to deal with that headache. So, you got your standards in the home: Kelsey, Juju, Che, move on. So those were our quick hits / best of the rest. Now let's get into our matchup of the week.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Wow, we have a matchup of the week between two teams that have combined 4 wins in week 9. Yes, I want to get a little frisky here, a little exciting. So I chose Green Bay Packers at the Lions, where Green Bay is currently favored by 3.5 points. The over/under is reasonably high at 49.5 points. This leaves projected point total for Green Bay at 26.5, while Detroit's projected at 23.5. So this is a great NFC North matchup to highlight Week 9. Both teams, however, have vastly underperformed expectations. One based on relative incompetence, and the other based on a ton of injuries. I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together on which I'm talking about for which scenario. The Lions are basically out of it at this point, but the Packers are fighting for their lives in order to maintain some semblance of hope for the playoffs as a wild card. So I expect them to have a fire lit under their butts for this game. And it seems that they did have a little bit of an aha moment last week against the Bills, where they understood with Christian Watson out and literally no wide receivers that maybe they should lean into their run game. Maybe the fact that they have 2 dominant running backs in A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, they should probably run their offense through them, because guess what? They are great players, and they are the best offensive options right now on your offense. Stop trying to make Aaron Rodgers happy. And Aaron Jones had an amazing game versus the 5th ranked pass run defense for the Bills. Now they're going up against the 31st ranked run defense in the Detroit Lions. So expect them to go absolutely nuclear against this defense. On the other side of the ball, the run defense isn't much better from Green Bay, ranking in at only 27th best. So with Detroit shipping out Hawkinson, the strength of the team will continue to run through DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams as one of the more dynamic running back tandems in the league. Amon-Ra's value goes way up with Hawkinson now being out of town as really the only pass catching target for Jared Goff. But I'm going to cap his upside here a little bit in Week 9, because he's going to be facing Jair Alexander, who is playing at an elite level. So I expect him to still get some production out of Amon-Ra, but expect Jair to shut him down a little bit. I'm not expecting a Week 2 30-point performance whatsoever. So let's get into our must-starts. Aaron Jones, you got to start him. DeAndre Swift, depending on health. Jamal Williams is a must-start at this point. He has garnered over 90% of the goal line touches and 90% of the touches within the 5-yard line. He is their goal line back. He has a touchdown upside, so you cannot. And we saw last week, even though he had only 37% of snaps compared to 50% of the snaps that DeAndre Swift had, Jamal Williams ended up with a better fantasy game because he found the end zone, because when they get down to that shortened goal yardage, they put in Jamal Williams, so he's a must-start going forward, bona fide RB2. Romeo Doubs, Amon-Ra St. Brown round out our must-starts, as well as the alpha wide receivers in each respective offense. On the probably start, you're probably going to start Aaron Rodgers, you're probably going to start Jared Goff, and you're probably going to start Robert Tonyan, just as necessary starts. And then if you do need a desperation start, if things are really going bad for your team, DJ Chark, we'll see Jair pull coverage on Amon-Ra, which should open up the rest of this Packer secondary, which absolutely sucks. Rasul Douglas has not played anywhere close to the level he was last year, so DJ Chark should find himself open pretty often, and we know that Jared Goff is capable of getting him the ball. So that's going to be our matchup of the week. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is the first week where my content will be posted to the Sleeper HQ YouTube channel and the Sleeper platform in and of itself. If you go to the widget, go scroll down, videos, I will be there. The teams that I covered in depth are the Bengals, the Ravens, the Green Bay Packers, the Lions, the Bears, the Vikings, and the Patriots. So I did basically the top 4 fantasy options from all 7 of those teams. So if you want to have an in-depth breakdown on T. Higgins, on Devin Duvernay, on Justin Fields, go check out those videos for positional rankings, how I view them going into this week, and start-sit questions. And then let's get into our parting thoughts.
You know, there's only one thing that I'm not clear about.
Actually, there is one thing.
What other thing?
All right, last thought here is just patience when it comes to the NFL trades. Yeah, Tuesday afternoon was very, very exciting, but it will take some time for these guys to learn the playbook and find some cadence with their new offenses. And I understand there weren't like major moves. There wasn't like the CMC of a couple weeks ago or Kadarius Toney, but there's still options that people will probably try to find fantasy relevance in Naeem Hines, Chase Edmonds, Jeff Wilson Jr., Chase Claypool, that it's going to take a while for them to get incorporated. I wouldn't really rush into starting them this week. So my advice, take a very, very, very cautious approach to players that have just joined the new teams this week. That does not apply to Kadarius Toney because he joined last week. That does not apply to CMC, who joined 2 weeks ago. I'm talking about guys who just joined this week. So Chase Claypool, while some people think he's very, very talented still in his rookie deal, which would really open up this Bears offense, patience is key. Let them figure it out against the Dolphins. They have Atlanta next week. Then we can start talking about Chase Claypool. All right, guys. That's all I have for you today. Enjoy week 9.